Listen closely. Because I'll tell you the truth no one wants to face, most men who step into the market are already finished before they place their first trade. And the reason is simple. They don't know themselves and they don't respect the market. Most men lose before they begin because they mistake a market for a mirror. They look into it and see what they want, not what is there. I did that once. I chased a flicker on the tape like a moth to a lamp, certain my cleverness would carry the day. The price turned slow at first, then sharp, and I sat there arguing with numbers. I told myself it would come back. It didn't. Pride paid the bill. After that, I learned the first order of business is not to be right, but to stay alive. Capital is air. You don't notice it until you're gasping. The tape has a way of testing your nerve. It will drift just enough to make you doubt, then jerk just enough to make you lunge. When I rate it now, I wait for the market to show its hand twice. First the push, then the hold. A stock will clear a level it has respected for weeks. I don't buy the first leap. I let it breathe. If it slips back and finds support where the resistance used to be, that's a sign. I take a starter small, almost insulting to the ego. If it behaves, I add. If it doesn't, I'm out before the ink dries. No speeches, no bargaining, no funeral. The fellows who fail think they're fighting the market. They're fighting themselves. A winner moves in your favor, and you feel that itch to cash it, to be congratulated by your own ledger. That itch has cost more fortunes than bad ideas. I learned to make the market pay me for the privilege of keeping my position. I'll raise my line as it rises. I'll add only after it proves it can carry the extra weight. A pyramid built on air falls. A pyramid built on solid advances holds like brick. The moment a move loses its character, I lighten. If it turns heavy, I'm gone. There's no shame in surviving. A losing trade is a fire in a theater. You don't debate the architect, you find the exit. I keep my exits drawn before I enter. The level is not picked to flatter my entry, it's picked to admit I might be wrong. When that line goes, I go. The loss is tuition. It hurts less when paid promptly. Delay doubles the fee. Patience is as hard as courage. Most can't sit still. They need action the way a gambler needs clatter. I sit through long, dull stretches when the tape is all feints and whispering. That's when the careless boys donate their stake one tick at a time. When the right setup comes, I feel it in the quiet. Volume pressing like a tide, price stepping, not stumbling. I move then, not before. And after I'm in, I watch myself more than I watch the screen. Am I hoping or observing? Am I holding because the market says so, or because my ego refuses to admit fatigue? Discipline is a conversation with yourself, carried on while numbers blink. Respect is paid in rules and enforced with speed. The market doesn't owe me a penny. I owe it caution. I trade small when the picture is muddy, large when it clears. I don't average down. I let the market invite me higher. I don't pray. I plan. Some days the best trade is to fold my hands and listen to the tape mutter to itself. Other days it shouts. On those days when price surges, rests, and surges again. When the character holds and my pulse stays even, I press. Not recklessly, not timidly, but with the weight the move can bear. And if the next tick contradicts the last, I ease off, because staying solvent is the only way to be present for the next clean swing, and I can see one forming now, the bids walking up, the offers thinning. Most fail the same way. They snatch at nickels and cradle their losses like heirlooms. I know the itch. A trade turns a quick profit and your pulse starts to hum. You want to close it, to be told you were right. Then a loser creeps against you, and you start composing reasons to keep it, promising yourself one more tick, one more breath, as if mercy lives in the tape. That is the trap. The market rewards the man who can deny both impulses, the grab for easy praise and the hope that pain will forgive itself. I take my cue from behavior, not my feelings. A move begins with a shove, but a good one shows backbone. It pushes, pauses, holds where it should, and then pushes again. When I see that pattern, I don't chase the first thrust, I let it settle. I watch the bid step in where sellers used to bark. If the level holds, I open small, something I can cut without ceremony. When it advances with the same clean character, I press a little, always after proof, never before it. I lift my line as price climbs, not to strangle the trade, but to make it earn its keep. If it falters, I scale down with the same cool hand I used to add. This is how you avoid the cheap habit of cashing winners too soon. You make the market push you out, not your nerves. The other side is uglier. A loser that won't behave is a fire under the floorboards. By the time you smell smoke, it's late. So before I enter, I mark the point that says I was wrong. I don't pick it to flatter my courage. I pick it where the story I bought no longer makes sense. If that point hits, I'm out. No debate. No averaging down, no deals with the devil, no it'll come back. Maybe it will, but it won't do it with my money. People think this is cold. It isn't. It's self-preservation. Capital is the only seat at this table, lose the chair, and you don't get to play the next hand. I remember one morning when a name burst through its ceiling like a drill bit. I waited for the test. It came neat as chalk. I took a bite. It walked higher in tidy steps. I added a sliver, then another, each addition paid for by fresh strength. By noon it lost its rhythm. No disaster. Just heavy feet. I shaved a piece. It sank to my line. I cut the rest. Later it tried to rally, but the tone was wrong. More noise than intent. I stayed flat. Another day, another chart. Same lesson, the small. Quick profit tempts you to grab the slow. Stubborn loss begs you to believe. Do the opposite. Let the good trade breathe and prove. Starve the bad one and move on. This is not heroism. It is housekeeping. I sweep my book the way a man sweeps a workshop, clear the shavings, leave the good timber. The tape doesn't care, but my account does, and when the next clean drive presents itself, when price pushes, rest, and holds its ground with that calm pressure I've come to trust. I'll size the first bite like a scout. I'll watch the pullback for heart, and if it holds here, if the buyers step in again in the offers, the market has a nose for weakness. It can smell hesitation under a fresh suit and will run you over for the sport of it. I learned to keep my hands steady when the tape starts to sneer. A clean move begins, and if I'm strong, I don't chase the first burst. I watch it push, pull back, and hold where it should. That hold is the handshake. I take a small bite, a size I can cut without flinching. If it keeps its character, orderly steps, bid stepping up, sellers drying out, I let the trade earn more of my trust. I add only after it proves it can carry the extra weight. Weak men add because they're excited. Strong men add because the tape demands it. Discipline is not about barked orders. It's about quiet action when your stomach turns. The market will hand you a neat profit and whisper, take it before it vanishes. That whisper is a test. If the move is still honest, push, rest, push. I sit on my hands. I slide my line up behind it, not to choke it, but to keep the ground I've won. The moment it wobbles, not on noise but on character. Sloppy rallies, bids slipping like wet rope. I trim. If it loses the level that mattered, I'm out. I don't ask for a second opinion. The tape has already given one. Weakness shows up loudest in a loser. A position turns against you and pride tries to write a speech. Pride is expensive. I mark my exit before I enter, and when it hits, I pay and walk. No averaging down, no bargaining with smoke. When the story I bought no longer matches the tape in front of me, I fold. That cut is a cold blade, but it saves the patient. You don't survive a long campaign by winning every skirmish. You survive by not bleeding out in the small rooms. Patience is the twin of courage. It takes nerve to enter. It takes more to wait. I let quiet markets be quiet. I don't poke at dull tape just to feel alive. That's when weakness feeds. Boredom, small bets that drift, feeds nibbling like rats. I'd rather be flat and sharp than busy and dull. When the right kind of pressure builds, volume like a tide, price leaning into a level and refusing to give it up, I move. The entry is a test, not a victory lap. I expect the tape to test me back. If the pullback lands where it should and buyers answer without fuss, I give it more room. If it doesn't, I collect my small loss and keep my powder dry. There was a morning when a name broke clean through a ceiling it had knocked on for weeks. I waited. Counted to 10 with my eyes on the bid. The test came shallow and firm. I took my piece. It marched in measured strides, not frantic, not lazy. I added a notch and tightened my trail. Later the steps turned uneven. I didn't argue. I clipped half, watched it breathe, then clipped the rest when it slipped under my mark. A different afternoon, another stock teased the top and failed. I was wrong on the first try, out fast, no scar. The second attempt showed backbone. I stepped back in without carrying the bruise. That is strength, not swagger, but clean decisions done on time. The market sniffs for any hint of doubt, and if it finds it, it will shove you where it wants. So I keep my rules sharp, my size honest, my pulse even, and as I watch this one lean into resistance with the offers thinning and the bids inching up, if the next pullback lands right here, the hardest part isn't the chart or the news, it's the voice in your own skull. Fear and greed sit on each shoulder like twin bookies, and they know your habits better than you do. Fear tells you to hide when the setup is clean. Greed tells you to press when the edge is gone. I learned to listen for those voices and rate them like noise on a wire. When the bell goes and the tape starts talking, I watch price the way a hunter watches wind. A good move has a posture. Push, breathe, hold, push. If I feel fear trying to spare me from embarrassment, I remind it that embarrassment is cheaper than disobedience. I take the starter position anyway, small enough to cut without ceremony, large enough to keep me honest. Then I wait. If the pullback lands where it should and buyers answer promptly, I let the trade earn a second slice. If my pulse speeds up at the idea of adding, I add less than I want. Greed always asks for a heaping plate. I serve it a measured spoon. There are days when fear wears a respectable suit. The tape looks heavy, the headlines grumble, and you can feel the room leaning one way. That's when fear sells you on comfort. Take the quick profit, bank the win, don't be a fool. But I didn't come here for comfort. If the character of the move remains steady and my level hasn't cracked, I sit on my hands and let the market do the carrying. I slide my line up behind it the way a commander moves supply forward, not so close I trip my own advance, not so far that I invite disorder. When the tone changes, the bids stop stepping, the advances get sloppy. I peel some off. I don't need a speech from the tape. A shrug is enough. If it slips under my mark, I'm out clean. Fear would call that caution. I call it protocol. Greed plays dirtier. It shows up right after a tidy run when your ledger looks prettier than you are. It tells you to add because you feel smart, not because the tape can carry more weight. That's how men blow out on good ideas. I add only after fresh proof, never before. If I stack a position, each layer must pay rent. The moment the move stops paying, the newest layer goes first. This is how you keep the house from leaning. Greed also whispers when a trade turns against you, average it. Nurse it, show the market you won't be bullied. I've paid that tuition. Now I mark my exit before I enter, and when that number shows, I'm gone. The loss is a receipt, not a grievance. Self-mastery is repetition done without drama. I train it when I'm flat, so it's there when I'm in. I practice watching price without narrating my fantasy. I practice scratching trades without apology. I practice waiting through the dull hours when nothing lines up, because boredom is a thief dressed as opportunity. On a quiet afternoon, I'll see a name lean into resistance, offers thinning, bids inching, volume pressing like a tide. Fear says it might fail. Greed says take a big bite. I take a fair one. It pushes, rests, and holds. I feel the itch to cash. I don't. I raise my line, give it air, make it prove itself again. If the next pullback lands exactly where it should and the buyers answer without fuss, I'll give it one more notch, not because I want more, but because the tape can carry it. And if the character changes by a hair, just a hair, I'll trim first and ask questions later, and right now it's testing the level. The bids are showing up on cue. And if they step again here, the crowd is always late, always loud, and always certain. You can hear it in the tape long before you hear it in the room. A good move starts quiet, pressing, testing, holding, and the crowd barely blinks. Then a burst hits, and they wake up like a flock of birds, all wings and noise, bidding against each other for the privilege of buying what they ignored at a fair price an hour ago. That's when I breathe through my nose and do nothing. I let the first rush spend itself. If the pullback lands where it should and buyers step in on cue, I take a starter small enough to abandon without sentiment. I am not trying to be clever. I am trying to be aligned. The crowd will chase the shadow of momentum. I want the backbone of it. If the rhythm stays true, push, rest, push, I add a slice, never more than the move can carry, and I slide my line up behind it so the market funds my courage. When the chants get loud and the board flashes like carnival lights, I watch the character, not the spectacle. The crowd buys climax. I sell to that applause. The first wobble after euphoria is the tell bids stop stepping, offers get sticky, candles grow fat and hesitant. I trim into that noise not because I know the top, but because I know the crowd. They need a story, I need a seat for the next one. Panic is the other side of the same coin. A gap down opens like a trapdoor, and the air fills with fear. The crowd doesn't see prices, it sees survival. They dump without looking, and the tape turns into a river of hands. I don't try to catch falling knives, I wait for the blade to hit the floor. Capitulation has a tone. Wild prints that suddenly go dull, bids that stop running away. A level that refuses to die despite fresh bad news. I don't buy the first bounce. I buy the second test if it holds like oak. I set my exit before I enter because panic is contagious, and I won't let their fever write my orders. If the bounce carries clean and the pullbacks grow shallow, I let it pay me to stay. If it slips under my mark, I'm gone while the crowd argues with smoke. Protection of capital is not caution, it's ammunition. The crowd spends theirs on emotion. I spend mine on confirmation. I don't average down to soothe pride, and I don't add up to impress myself. Each layer must prove it belongs. The minute the market stops paying rent, the newest layer goes first. Then the next, like shutting doors in a storm. The crowd will call me lucky when I sell into their cheers and buy from their tears. Luck has nothing to do with it. It's practice, reading the tape until it reads you back, knowing the smell of euphoria, the texture of real demand, the thud of real fear. Right now I can hear that noise building again, bids chasing, offers thinning, and if it rushes, then breathes, then finds its feet exactly where it should. I'll size the first bite like a scout. I'll tuck my line under the new ground. And if the next test lands here, this game isn't about money, it's about judgment. Money is the scoreboard after the whistle. Judgment is the swing before the pitch. The decision to stand still when everyone else is fidgeting, the nerve to press only when the odds are lined up like soldiers. I sit in front of the tape and ask one question. Is the market inviting me, or am I inviting myself? Most days the answer is no. The price drifts, it faints, it whispers. I let it talk. When a real move starts, it doesn't plead, it behaves, it pushes with intent, steps back with tidiness, and refuses to give up the ground it just took. I don't buy that first shove. I wait for the test, the turn where old resistance is asked to serve as new support, and I watch the bids step in as if they rehearsed it. That's the invitation. I take a starter, small enough to erase without emotion, big enough to make me pay attention. Judgment is choosing proof over hope. A trade that's right will pay you to keep it. After I'm in, I expect the market to prove me right again. If the pullback is shallow and firm, if the next advance is clean and not frantic, I add a notch. Not because I'm hungry, but because the move can carry the extra weight. I shape the position like a pyramid built from inside out. Each layer must sit on real progress, not imagination. I slide my stop up a step behind price, not to smother the trade, but to bank terrain I don't intend to surrender. The minute the character shifts, sloppy lifts, bids ducking at the first sign of trouble, I trim without ceremony. When it loses the level that mattered, I'm flat and calm. Being wrong is a cost, staying wrong is a choice. I remember a morning when a quiet name began to lean on a ceiling it had respected for weeks. Volume pressed like a tide, offers thinned, the push came. I did nothing. The pullback kissed the old ceiling and held like oak. I bought my scout lot. It walked higher in even steps. No fireworks, just steady marching. I added a slice and pulled my line up behind it. Then the crowd woke up late and loud, and the board flashed like a parade. My job wasn't to celebrate, it was to measure. The next pullback was deeper than it should have been, but it landed on my line and found breath. I kept half and cut half. Later it pushed again, honest and firm. I replaced what I'd trimmed and let it work. That day paid because the entries were earned and the sizing matched the evidence. Judgment first, money second. There are other days when the market offers a beautiful lie. A gap opens, the street howls, and price bolts like a spooked horse. I've chased those before. The lesson is stitched into my ledger. Now I stand still. I wait for the retest. I wait for the refusal to break. I wait for the second confirmation, not the first. If it doesn't come, I don't go. Boredom begs for action. I let boredom starve. My capital is my oxygen. I won't spend it to relieve silence. When the setup is real, it doesn't need coaxing. It holds where it should. It advances with rhythm, and it keeps paying me not to leave. Then I strike harder, not recklessly, not timidly, but with the weight the move can bear. And if the next tick contradicts the last, I don't argue with it. Judgment cuts as clean as it builds, and right now I see another level being tested. Bid stepping like clockwork, the offers thinning at the edge, and if it breathes, then holds, right? This is a campaign, not a carnival. Luck shows up in stories. In the pit, it's discipline that keeps you breathing. The market is a field with shifting lines, smoke in the air, and no mercy for dreamers. Most men charge at the first flash of gold, flags high, eyes glazed, and they die on ground they never scouted. I don't charge. I send a scout. I watch the tape for posture. Pressure, pause, refusal to give back ground. A real advance doesn't jitter, it steps. When price pushes through a level and then tests it like a soldier testing a bridge, I take my first position, small and obedient, the kind I can kill without ceremony if the bridge creaks. If the pullback lands where it should and the bids hold their line, I let the position live. If the march continues in orderly strides, I add a sliver and move my stop up like moving supply wagons forward, close enough to protect, far enough not to trip my own men. The undisciplined think victory is measured by noise. I measure by behavior. A clean move pays you to stay. When it stops paying, I lighten. When it breaks character, I'm gone. There's no glory in falling on your sword. There's only paperwork. War teaches you to respect ammunition. Capital is cartridges. Spend them stupidly, and you'll be brave for a very short time. I don't average down. I don't hold and hope. Hope is a drunk boogler. He blows at the wrong time and gets good people hurt. Before I enter, I mark the line that says I'm wrong. If Price crosses it, I retreat with my skin. That sting is tuition. Paying it promptly is strategy. The men who refuse to retreat turn a skirmish into a funeral. I've attended enough of those to know better. There was a session when a name began to lean on its ceiling like a battering ram. The first smash looked triumphant. I stood still. The retest came, cool, shallow, loyal to the new level. I bought my scout. It marched in quiet increments, no hysteria, just resolute pressure. I added a measured layer and lifted my stop to the new ground. Later, euphoria spilled into the room. The kind of noise that makes clerks grin and veterans look for exits. The next pullback lost a shade of discipline. I shaved a piece, not because I knew the top, but because the character had smudged. When it steadied, I replaced what I'd trimmed. When it slipped my mark, I flattened the rest without a speech. My job is not to predict the war. My job is to survive the battle and be funded for the next one. Endurance is built in the dull hours, when the tape is all feints and whispers. That's where the undisciplined spend their stake on boredom, trading for the feeling of trading. I sit on my hands and listen. When the right kind of pressure builds, volume pressing like a tide offers thinning, bids stepping with purpose, I move. The entry is not a medal, it's a position in a line that might break. I behave as if it will. I keep layers honest, each one paying rent, each one removable without tearing down the house. I don't confuse activity with progress or thrill with edge. I watch for the slight change in breath, the first sloppy rally, the bid that flinches, and I cut before the shouting starts. Survival isn't romantic, it's method. Right now the tape is leaning again. Testing the old trench, buyers showing up where they should, not a tick higher, not a tick late. And if this next pullback lands dead on the plank and holds its weight without complaint, then hear me well. This market is not a place for the careless, the proud, or the weak. It is a battlefield where only discipline stands between survival and ruin. Most men will come and go, chasing shadows, trading on hope, mistaking noise for signal. They will lose. Not because the market defeated them, but because they never mastered themselves. The few who endure are the ones who cut losses without a tremor, who sit tight when the moment demands patience, who strike hard when the odds are ripe, and who know that protecting capital is protecting life itself. This game will test your nerves, strip you of illusion, and demand the kind of honesty most men can't afford. If you would last, if you would rise above the crowd, remember this: the market will never reward your wishes, but it will always reward your discipline.